This session is going to be recorded today, and hopefully by the end of the day, I'll be able to send a copy of this recording to everyone. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is how the meeting is going to work today. We've got a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to go through that'll take roughly 30 minutes. At the end of the presentation, there'll be time for general questions and answers. Having said that, this session is very informal, so you're certainly welcome to ask any questions throughout the presentation. If you've got a question that you've asked that maybe we're going to address in another slide or two, we may ask to put that on hold just for a minute till we get to that section. Now I'd like to formally introduce Dr. Kate Jones. Dr. Jones is the director of the DNP Nurse Executive Leadership Program. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Jones. She works specifically, again, with the nurse executive leadership population, and she'll be giving the general overview today. Welcome, Dr. Jones.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Right.
And I think we've had a couple more people join as well.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. I didn't see them. Thank you. I got Maggie. All right. Thank you, Maggie. Natasha. I'm making some notes here so I can send everybody a copy of the presentation afterwards. All right. I've got Gabrielle, Shante, Dion, Maggie, and Natasha. Did I miss anybody? All right, I'll take that as a no. All right, very good. So again, 30 minutes, we've got time for questions and answers at the end, but again, this is very informal. Certainly encourage you to ask any questions you have along the way. I want to do a real quick sound check. Natasha, can you hear me okay? You need to unmute yourself. Or you can just nod if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, sorry.
Okay, great. Maggie, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, Maggie, what's your last name? I want to make sure I can get the presentation sent to the right person.
Sorkin, S-O-R-K-I-N.
You're real quiet. Can you say that again?
Sorkin, S-O-R-K-I-N.
Okay, thank you. And ladies, you're welcome to either have your camera on or off, whatever is most appropriate for you. Don't feel like you need to have it on if you don't want to. All right, let's continue. So this is the agenda for today's session. Some of the topics are going to be true across all DNP programs across the country. Some of the things we're going to discuss are specific here to USC. Again, do want to emphasize this presentation is very informal, so you're certainly welcome and encouraged to ask any questions throughout the time. Before we get started, does anybody have any specific questions before we get started? And we'll make sure we'll address that when we get to that section.
I just got,
Go ahead.
if you have obtained your master's in another human services program, you have taken a research class and a class or a combination of classes that are considered that fall in line with statistics. I noticed for the program that I would like to pursue, I think there are 2 statistics classes. With the research class, do you believe, because I'm certain that it has to be reviewed by the registrar and the program directors, but do you believe it's a possibility for at least one of the statistics classes and the research class to transfer?
Okay, you've got a couple questions wrapped up in that. I think it may make sense to hold off on most of that until we get to the admissions part and kind of talk there about potential courses, that sort of thing. But Dion, if I don't specifically address that, please just say, a reminder, hey, Scott, what about my situation? A master's in another health-related field, that sort of thing. So, okay, good. All right. Any other general questions that we should hit on when we get to the appropriate place? All right, having not heard any, let's continue. So before we get into the details of the program, just wanted to share, and we're certainly proud to announce that earlier this year, the U.S. News and World Report named us the #1 school for online graduate nursing programs. This is the 7th consecutive year we've been in the top 10. So again, something we're real proud of. They also specifically recognized us as a school for veterans. They also recognize our nurse practitioner programs, as well as our nursing administration program. So I thought you'd like to know what kind of school you're looking at. All right. At this point, Dr. Jones is going to be taking over, and she'll be covering the details specifically of the DNP program. So, Dr. Jones.
Thank you. Before I do dive into this, I'm familiar with what program some of you are interested in, but Dion and Maggie, if you could tell me what program you are looking at. It's a small enough group that I can tailor what I say a little bit. So Dion, what program are you looking at?
Psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner.
Okay. And do you have, you said you have a bachelor's in nursing, but a master's in something else?
That is correct. My master's is in clinical mental health counseling.
Okay. All right. And Maggie? Maggie, if you could just tell me what program you're looking at.
I'm sorry, I had to use the restroom real quick. I am interested in the DNP. I have my master's from Carolina in nursing already.
Okay, I'm sorry, you have your master's in?
Nursing. I'm a nurse practitioner already.
You're a nurse practitioner, okay. So that would be a postmaster's, and we call it the no concentration because you already have your specialty, so you would be doing the DNP courses. Okay, thank you for that. It just helps me a little bit. So let's talk briefly about the difference between a DNP and a PhD. So the DNP degree is a practice-focused degree. It's about application of evidence for best practice and process improvement. And so individuals who have this degree typically would be clinical practitioners, so nurse practitioners, executive leaders, so thus the nurse exec leadership track. And then the scholarship that DNPs do is in clinical and leadership roles. Whereas a PhD is research focused, creating new knowledge as nurse scientists. And our PhD peers conduct research or have research careers typically in academia, in clinical settings, in government, and in health system settings. And just for those of you on the call, Scott didn't mention this, but my terminal degree is a DNP. So I'm happy to share with you about the DNP. Okay, we can go to the next one. So, you know, just thinking about who should get a DNP, obviously it's someone who, a nurse who wants to advance their career and wants to assume leadership roles or clinical expert roles, typically in practice settings. As I said earlier, it's a practice-focused doctoral degree rather than a research-focused doctoral degree. You would have an interest in evaluating and improving health outcomes, using evidence-based practice in clinical settings, quality improvement, and systems leadership. And then for those seeking a nurse exec leader DNP, there is a misconception that the only role might be the chief nursing officer role, but actually there are many roles that DNP prepared nurse leaders can fill in nursing organizations, such as, you know, CEO, CNO, but directors of quality, directors of patient experience, directors of nursing practice, also consultants, specialists in health policy, and of course, roles in academia as well. So what's included in the DNP program, we follow the DNP essentials that are from the AACN. Those focus on leadership development, health policy, and evidence-based practice. And then, of course, I'm sure you've heard of or are aware that DNP earning the degree includes completing a DNP project as kind of your, we don't use the term capstone anymore, but people are familiar with that terminology, kind of as the concluding project of your DNP degree. So that's a project that either applies evidence to a quality improvement, applies an evidence-based practice application in a health setting, or is a health policy related issue, all in the clinical setting, as I mentioned. All of our programs include didactic and clinical, and our nurse practitioner courses in the BSN to DNP nurse practitioner tracks also include immersions. In order to obtain a DNP degree, you'll have to have 1,000 clinical hours total. If you have a master's degree in nursing, and as in the course of that master's degree, you obtained clinical hours, those hours count towards the 1,000. So what we do is a gap analysis to determine how many remaining hours you need to achieve to reach 1,000. Many of our nurse practitioner colleagues had many hours in their master's level nurse practitioner program. So those hours, in addition to the hours that are required in our didactic or in our clinical courses, typically you don't have a problem at all reaching 1,000 hours. Sometimes our nurse leader applicants have fewer hours in their master's programs, and so you would need to complete more hours related to your project to reach that 1,000 hours. But it's highly manageable, and as I said, we do a gap analysis early in the program to give you an idea how many hours you'll need to complete. Okay, so I think we have many of these options represented on the call. So there is a BSN entry option for nurses who are prepared with their bachelor's degree in nursing, and you can go through the ACNP nurse practitioner program, family nurse practitioner, psych mental health nurse practitioner, or the nurse executive leadership program. It has, I won't read this all to you, it has the number of classes and semesters for full-time or part-time participation for each of those in the BSN to DNP track. Oh, and by the way, the BSN to DNP program has a summer start only. All of those students who are accepted would start in the summer. You can go to the next slide, but while you're doing that, Scott, I'm going to say hello to, it looks like Renell has joined us. Renell, can you say hello so we know you can hear us?
Hello.
Okay, thank you. Nice to have you. And can you tell us what program you are considering?
The doctoral program, DNP for nursing.
In postmasters, do you already have your master's?
That's
degree?
correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Postmasters.
Okay. Are you a nurse practitioner or you're looking at nurse exec?
I am a nurse practitioner.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to remind everyone, when you're not talking, if you don't mind muting your microphone, that'll help cut down on some of the background noise. So thank you.
So the options in the DNP program for those who already have their master's degree, so it's a perfect time for you to join Ronell, is the no concentration option, which basically means you will already have your clinical specialty as a nurse practitioner, and you are taking the courses to obtain now your DNP. And then the nurse executive leadership track. Typically, these nurses have a master's degree in nursing administration or some similar degree and are completing the nurse executive leader track to obtain their DNP. So the no concentration track has 11 classes in it over 6 semesters. The nurse executive leadership track has 12 or 13 classes over 7 semesters, and the 12 or 13 just is because it depends whether you had a finance class in your master's program or not. If you did not have a finance class, you do have to take it as part of your DNP. If you've already had it, you do. Our postmaster's DNP students all start in the fall. So that's a fall start on the program.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jones. In just a minute, we're going to transition to talking a little bit more about admissions requirements. Before we do that, does anybody have any questions for Dr. Jones specifically about the requirements or the courses or anything, or maybe the difference between the different tracks?
No, I don't have any questions yet.
Okay, okay. And again, we'll have time at the end for questions. So all right, so let's move on. Oh, sorry if we got to do the course format. So back to you, Dr. Jones.
That's okay. So our didactic courses are all online, asynchronously, which means there is no specific course time that you have to be online. So that allows our working professional nurses to do their didactic coursework at the day and time that works best for them. There are, in the BSN to DNP program, there are immersions where you do come to campus for checkoffs, but those are not included in the MSN to DNP program. And then your clinical requirements, you do practice within a healthcare facility. Those are either direct or indirect clinical hours, depending on the program. So indirect clinical hours means not providing patient care. All of the clinical hours in our nurse exec track are indirect clinical hours. You can go to the next one. Here's the on-site immersion information. I think it might only apply to Dion's interest. Nursing 704 in the psych mental health nurse practitioner track does include 3 days of on-site immersions. And then everyone is always interested in learning more about clinical requirements. The specifics, there is no clinical in the first semester required, so we can hold off on the detailed discussion about that for a little while. Requirements are discussed after admission. Students do seek out their own clinical placements to meet their own learning needs, but clinical sites and preceptors do have to be approved by the appropriate program director. Where it says travel may be required, that's primarily typically related to our nurse practitioner students. As you can imagine, finding a clinical placement for nurse practitioner students requires just the right placement, and sometimes the right place is a little bit of a distance away for the student. So we like to just give you a heads up about that travel might be required. Not necessarily, but depends on the exact clinical site for your needs.
Okay, now we're going to shift to the admissions part. As we kind of alluded to earlier, we do require people have BSN and or MSN. Need to, BSN entry students would obviously do the BSN entry concentration, which starts again in the summer. People with a master's in nursing would start in the fall. We are looking for applicants who have a cumulative 3.0 GPA or higher in all your prior coursework. What we'll do is we'll get copies of all prior transcripts, calculate a cumulative GPA, not just in your nursing courses, but for everything that you've ever done. You need to have at least 2,400 hours work experience as a nurse, and these should be within the last 24 months. We've got a specific work verification form that is part of the application process. That's something you'll give to your employer, and they can complete that and submit that with your application. If you've worked a couple places within the last few years, it's certainly okay to send 2 or 3 of those in based on where your experience was within the last 24 months. You also need to have a current unencumbered license in the state where your clinical requirements will be completed. It's important to note here that recently some of the different state boards of nursing have imposed restrictions about students completing online programs that are outside of their state. So if you're in Georgia and you're enrolling in the program in South Carolina, that's enrolling in a program that's outside of the state. We're not currently permitted to admit students from all 50 states. We're at about 21 or 22 right now. And if you've got a question about that, we've got it listed on our website, or I'd certainly be happy to answer that for you individually. I will say that most of the states in the Southeast we have covered, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. Finally, everyone who looks like a competitive applicant and satisfies all the requirements, we schedule an interview for. Most of the time, these are either conducted via Zoom or Teams, and that's something we'll coordinate with you once you get to that stage of the program. So what is the application process? Interested applicants submit an online application through the graduate school. The application itself, you should include a goal statement or a personal statement, a copy of your CV or resume, and a copy of your nursing license. Your personal statement should describe the advanced practice role and the scope for which you're applying. Be sure to indicate how the program is going to advance your professional goals. If there are any unique circumstances in your academic or career background, this would certainly be the appropriate place to explain that. We do encourage you to keep it brief. Try to keep your personal statement to no more than 2 pages. All right. I should also note here that everyone needs to upload BLS certification. Anyone who's applying for the acute care program, which nobody on this call is, but they also need to include ACLS certification. You need 3 recommendations, and these need to be from individuals who are doctorally prepared within the healthcare field. This could be a nurse with a DNP or a PhD, could be an MD, DO, PharmD, anyone in the healthcare field with a doctoral degree. So what you'll do when you complete the application, you'll list the name and email address of these references. They will be sent an electronic link to our recommendation form. They will complete the recommendation form and it can be submitted electronically. So you don't need to physically collect a letter of recommendation from anyone. The verification of work hours form, that's what I mentioned just a moment ago on the previous slide. This verifies that you've had at least 2,400 hours work experience working as a nurse within the last 24 months. It's roughly 1 year's worth of work experience. And again, this form, you can access it through the application. And then finally here, you can see that the GRE is not required, nor is any other standardized test required for the DNP program. Most of these items can be uploaded with your application. And for a few of them, like the names of your references, your CV or resume, and your personal statement, they must be uploaded before you're able to submit your documentation. But again, if you want to submit any other items after you submit your application, you could log back in and either submit them to the graduate school email address, or you can log back into your application to see what items have arrived. Application deadlines. Again, the BSN entry program, they start during the summer, and Dion, this would be the one that applies to you. Since you do have a BSN, and since your master is in another field, you would be considered a BSN entry. For the other folks who have an MSN, you'd be starting this fall, and actually you still have time if you want to start this fall. The application deadline is May 1st, so about 2 weeks away. Still have time to get everything in and get it ready. All right, so you see the dates there. One thing I would say is I do encourage you not to wait till the last minute to submit your application. Often it takes a little while for transcripts or recommendations to arrive. So if you wait till, we'll just use May 1st as an example. If you wait till May 1st to submit your application and it takes another week or 2 for those recommendations or transcripts to arrive, the admission process may be either partially completed or fully completed at that time. Also encourage you to apply as early as possible. You see the difference there between the rolling deadline and priority deadline. there's been discussion about giving additional opportunities for scholarships for folks who hit the priority deadline. So just do encourage you to apply as early as possible. Where do you send everything? Again, most items can be uploaded with your application. Anything that you're going to have mailed, so for example, official transcripts, they can either be sent electronically to the address listed here for the website, if your school does that, or anything that needs to be mailed could be mailed to the address listed there. Once you submit your application, we'll review it. We'll reach out to you, let you know if you're missing any items, and specifically what you're missing. Also, when your application is complete and has been forwarded to the department for review, we will reach out to you and let you know that as well. The DNP program does have some specific scholarship opportunities just available for DNP students. First, you must be admitted to the DNP program. If you're applying for the BSN entry program, you have to have at least a 3.0 GPA. If you're applying to the Postmaster's DNP, you need to have at least a 3.5 in your graduate GPA. Must be enrolled full-time. For the BSN entry students, this would be 3 classes per semester. For the MSN entry students, it would be 2 classes per semester. Again, both BSN and MSN entry students are eligible. There is an additional application required for this, and then you see the deadlines listed here for the different ones for that. I will say, in addition to that, besides the specific DNP scholarships, there are some general USC College of Nursing scholarships that we offer. So certainly encourage everyone to apply for those. Anybody who's admitted, we will share the details with you about the different application links and those deadlines. Okay, here's a few links before we get to the question and answer time. The first is simply the link to our DNP website. The second link there is the link to scholarship information that you'd find on our website. And the third is the link to the graduate school application. All right. We realize we've covered a lot of information in a fairly short period of time. So now it's your time to ask questions. So I'm going to recommend to just speak up. If you would feel better doing it in a chat format, we can certainly, submit them that way if you'd like, but feel free to speak up and just share your questions.
Hi, Scott and Dr. Kate.
Hi, Natasha. Good to see you.
So as far as the MSN to DNP, I'm out of state, so Virginia, and I know a lot of the classes, which Dr. Kate or Dr. Jones stated that are online. The immersion classes from the MSN, will I have immersion classes since I'm not on the FNP track?
Hey, Natasha, good to see you. No, there are no immersions currently for the nurse exec leader track.
And so I guess that brings me to have another question, is that, so is that still considered out of state tuition?
Well, let Scott answer that one.
Yes, yes. There are some differences in the way the university codes are considered in-state and out-of-state. And even though it's an online program, it does have a differentiated tuition rate for those folks living in South Carolina and outside of South Carolina.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. What else? Other questions people have?
I have a question. This is Dion Scott.
Go ahead.
I have a question regarding the 24 hours within the last 24 months. Is that in specifics because oftentimes bachelor's prepared nurses, they like to jump right in to obtaining their graduate degree, or because I retired from the military September 2017 after 20 years of service. So as you can imagine, I needed a bit of a break and self-care time after doing so. So I don't have direct nursing care in the last 24 months, but I have been a nurse for, I believe, 13 years now. And I have remained, for licensing, I have remained current in education. even though my master's is in a different discipline.
Right. Thank you. Well, first of all, Deanna, I want to say thank you for your service. Also, Dr. Jones is also a veteran. So, but I'm going to let Dr. Jones, you want to address that about the work experience?
Yes, I would recommend that Dion have a conversation with Dr. Inman, who's the program director for the PMHNP program. Obviously, you have a great deal of nursing experience. So to answer, I don't want to give an answer for Dr. Inman. However, you prefaced your question with asking if it's because many nurses want to jump directly from their BSN into an MSN program without having any clinical experience. And that certainly is part of the reason that that work experience requirement is there. And that doesn't apply to you. So in your circumstance, I would, if it was somebody in my program, I would want them to talk to the program director and talk through your specific circumstances and see if that can be waived.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm sure that Mr. Ranges can send you Dr. Inman's email.
Certainly.
It's available on the website as well, but she would be happy to talk with you.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, you know, we do want folks to have at least that 2,400 hours work experience. You know, if you've got a unique situation where maybe you don't have quite 2,400 hours because, well, this past year we had some people who were furloughed due to COVID or missed a couple of months due to maternity leave, things like that. If you've got unique circumstances, let us know. There is some flexibility with that. All right, other questions?
In general, for the MSN to DNP program, if you're working currently, can you do some of the clinical hours where you're working? I mean, are those, I know in, you know, your master's degree, you had to have specific clinical settings, but what about with the DNP? Is it typically able to be done where you're working currently?
Yes, it is. And in fact, that works better for most students to be able to do their DNP project and related clinical hours in their work setting. The caveats to that are that it can't be work that you do on an everyday basis. It has to be kind of over and above your regular work experience, because obviously you are expanding your scope to DNP level of practice. And secondly, when you get to the point of working on your project, you need an outside committee member, and that outside committee member has to be doctorally prepared. And some people do struggle with that a little bit in their clinical setting, that they can't find someone, and you would at that point talk with your faculty and your DNP committee faculty mentors about identifying the right person to be your outside committee member. It doesn't have to be a DNP, it can be DNP, PhD, MD, DO, but that's one of the things that sometimes causes a hiccup. Other than that, you should be able to do all your hours in your work setting.
Thank you. Other questions?
Hello, this is Ronell Goodwin. As far as the research projects are concerned, are retrospective research projects allowed? And if so, how much data do you think is required to prove that whatever evidence is out there currently regarding a research topic isn't effective?
Yeah, so we make a distinction in the DNP program between research and scholarship. So research is what's conducted by our PhD colleagues, and in the DNP program, you're doing a scholarly project. Yes, it can be a retrospective cohort study of some, you know, intervention or application that was done. But the point of the DNP project is application of evidence in the practice setting, either quality improvement or applying something. So picture your work setting. If there's a best practice that hasn't been implemented, applying that evidence could be a DNP project. If there's a quality improvement that needs to be done, you could do a retrospective review to provide you with data to then say what intervention is going to improve the outcomes of this particular clinical problem. So where you start with the DNP program in your very first class is looking at a clinical problem that you're interested in. We don't want you to jump to a solution in that first semester. We want you to really think about fine-tuning the problem. And then as you proceed in the program, you will learn about applying evidence. You will learn about working within health systems. You'll learn about conducting projects within settings, clinical settings, and all of those steps that then take you to the semester where you do a project implementation. I hope that helped for now.
You guys have had some great questions so far. What other questions do folks have? Well, I tell you what, while you're waiting to formulate your question, let me share our contact information. And let me just say that I'm sure that Dr. Jones or myself would be happy to answer any additional questions you have. Don't hesitate to reach out afterwards. Again, I'll be sending, hopefully by the end of the day, a copy of this presentation to everyone. But do you want to remind those MSN prepared folks that the application deadline is May 1st if you want to start this fall? Gian, you're going to have to wait till next summer, but that's okay. You can start preparing for that now. So, any other questions? We're certainly willing and able to stay on as long as you have questions, but we also want to be respectful of people's time. If you don't have any questions, you're certainly welcome to go. Again, thank you for your participation today. Appreciate you joining us. I know a couple of you have already applied and been admitted, so congratulations. The folks that have not yet, will be watching for your applications. All right. And I'm willing to stay as long as people have questions.
Thank you all for your time, Dr. Jones and Scott. I'll reach out to you, Scott, if I have any difficulty locating Dr. Inman's.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you when I send a copy of the recording. So that's not a problem.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
This is Ronell again. Are the classes basically 2 at a time per semester?
Yes. The postmaster's program is 2 courses per semester. And I'm looking, your very last semester is just completing your DNP scholarly project. So that's really just 1 course that last semester. You do the implementation of your project in your 5th semester, and then in your 6th semester, you're doing your analysis of your data, writing your final paper, and doing your final defense.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ronell.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's the percentage of students getting into the middle of a project and it's looking like it's going to be unsuccessful, and they have to start the process all over again? What does that look like?
We've done a lot of work over the last couple of years designing our curriculum to try to prevent that from happening. we don't want you to get halfway through and have to start all over. So we have 3 foundational courses prior to even doing your project, and then you go into your project planning course, and then you go into your project implementation courses. So so for example, I teach Nursing 780, which is a health systems course. But in that course, we also look at some, and that's in your 2nd semester. In that course, we also look at things like the feasibility of your project. And I give you the considerations to think about. So you start thinking about, oh, I'm going to have to get permission to do that. What if I don't get that permission? I should look at that ahead of time. Those types of things. The other thing that we do in the 2nd semester during the course that I teach is connect you to what we call our mentor groups. So you will be grouped with other students, 3 or 4 students who are in the same track as yourself, and then with 2 faculty members. And those 2 faculty members will end up being your College of Nursing committee members. And so you start talking with them at that point about your project idea, your clinical problem you're planning to work on, and they will also tell you at that point if they think you need to maybe head in a different direction. So all of that foundational work happens before you get to the semester where you implement your project. So we haven't had too many who have to change at implementation stage since we've changed our curriculum to support that evolution.
Awesome. That's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a very good question. You must know some DNPs who have gone through a program and ended up having to change.
I actually do. I have a girlfriend who completed the DNP program. I think she started with you all, but had to relocate to another state. But nevertheless, it was kind of, she ended up in the program a lot longer than she anticipated because she had to change. And I don't know what her project was or anything like that, but yeah. So that kind of, when she told me that, I was like, oh my God, that's stressful. It sounds stressful, so.
Yeah, now every once in a while, something happens, like somebody changes jobs in the middle of the program, and their new workplace wants something else done, or they, or their preceptor, their, outside committee member leaves an organization and they have to regroup. But we are trying really hard to support, the successful project, starting with the foundational courses, even before you get anywhere near doing your implementation.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was going to add earlier is that the majority of our students do work either part-time or full-time. So if you're kind of considering, hey, can I juggle this? You can. I mean, it's a significant time commitment. You have to, prioritize time management, but it certainly can be done. Having said that, once you're admitted to the program, we want to see you succeed. We don't gain we don't gain anything if you don't make it through the program. So your advisors, your faculty members, program directors, we all want to see you be successful and complete the program. So there are resources here to help you be successful.
Thank you. That's good to know.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for participating today. Those folks who have been admitted already, congratulations. Those folks who are not, we'll be watching for your applications. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions. Thank you all. We're going to get you out a little bit early, and everybody have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you both. Good afternoon.
You too. Bye.
Bye.